Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and today we're going to be rebooting my very first YouTube video. So 6 months ago on February the 1st, I put together the solo mole or Prospector Quantanium mining guide. That was all around 3.12, sort of when we moved over to having refineries and stuff. But 3.14's here, and some changes to different features have meant that's getting a bit out of date, so I think it's only fair to try and keep these things as up to date as I can, and not lead people astray down a blind alley. So I know it's a bit of a long video, so I have added chapters to make navigating around it easier. So I won't be offended if you just want to jump ahead to something that sounds particularly of interest to you. But I do want to make a much more comprehensive guide. So I think this is something you can probably start doing from the point that you've made your first few million in the game. So I want to keep in mind that sort of it might not be such experienced players who are watching it. So I want to try and tick off every box as I go. Of course, I might still forget to mention some things, and I might not know everything, so I hope I don't, because it's always good to still be improving your own gameplay. So if you do think I've missed anything, please feel free to just let me know in the comments. So if I just bring up my list of all the minables in the game, you'll see that Quantanium sits comfortably at the top. So the two prices that you see there are depending on whether or not you choose to refine the Quantanium or any of the other metals. But we'll go through that later. The important thing is it's a good way to make a lot of money. So my primary motivation behind putting this sort of guide out is to help players get more AUEC in their pockets. I don't have any problem at all with pledging for ships. Yeah, I've pledged for a few myself. But I think it's quite easy to get a bit carried away with Star Citizen. You can go from wanting to needing to a ship being in your hangar pretty quickly, in my experience. So it's just worth bearing in mind that all the ships in game, when they get released, you get one patch where the people who pledged for them have exclusive access to them. And then in the next patch, they're going to show up in the ship shops. So as long as you've got the AUC to buy it and you can wait a few months, you can try out an awful lot of the ships, and maybe that will help you decide sort of, exactly what you do want to pledge for, like what ship you can't live without in your hangar on day one. So as the name of the video suggests, I am going to show you how to solo the mole, this ship stood behind me. So it's technically a 4-person vessel, but it is possible to solo. The reason for doing that is primarily financial in the current state of the game. I've found mining Quantanium generally to be incredibly rewarding, but specifically soloing the mole to be probably the highest AUC per hour I can make in the game. But with that said, this ship is an awful lot more fun with friends. So if you own one of these, I'd really recommend you don't keep it to yourself. Get out there, find a crew, train some new people up. It's a great sort of training platform for new miners. But if you really do need to knuckle down because you're saving up for a ship, then solo mole mining or solo prospector mining is a great way to make some credits. If you are looking for people to play with though, please feel free to come and join us on Discord. We've got a great little community over at Frontier Consolidated, and we get up to all sorts of mining, combat, and indeed sort of making a number of our own missions, sort of using the game as a sandbox. So Star Citizen's great. It's a great looking game, in my opinion. But the point at which it really comes alive is when you get a chance to play with other people. So if that sounds good to you, then please feel free to come and say hi. So just before we get into the nuts and bolts of Quantanium mining, if you do happen to be a new player considering picking up Star Citizen, then maybe think about using my referral code, which I'll pop up on the screen now. Gets you an extra 5,000 credits when you start, so it's not much, but it's something towards that prospector. And it helps me out too, so it'd be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get on with cracking rocks. So from the outset, we need to understand the risks of quant mining. First is that you'll have too much money and you'll buy pointless stuff. But the second is that it's volatile. So you'll notice when you pick it up that you get a 15-minute warning. Then at 8 minutes, you get this yellow light appear in your ship. 6 minutes, that light turns flashing amber. With 2 minutes to go, it's very angry and red. And when the clock strikes 0, you'll find out that your mining ship has turned into a bomb. So that's the risk that justifies the reward behind the high prices of Quantanium. So as long as you accept those and you're still here, we need to think about location. So location is kind of twofold. First, we need to think about where we can actually sort of process and sell this Quantanium. So where are we going to base ourselves out of? And the answer to that's the refinery stations. These refinery decks are all located at Lagrange point space stations. So we've got them near all the major planets. So Hurston is the only one that has two. It's got HER-L1 over here and HER-L2. Then near ArcCorp we have ArcL1, CrewL1 next to Crusader, and MicL1 next to Microtech. So all of the refineries will have one of these processing departments, where you can either choose to sell your ore raw over on the left straight to the refinery, or you can refine it into the metals over at the terminals on the right. So the benefit to selling unrefined is that you can just drop it straight off. It's quick and easy. When you do a refinery job, you have to wait for that to complete, load the cargo onto a cargo ship, and then transport it to a TDD, a Trade and Development Division, to sell. However, the benefit of refining is that you basically double your money. You'll also notice that all of the refineries have bonus and negative yields depending on the different types of material. So that should influence your decision of where to base yourself from. Don't worry about pausing and reading through this. All of these sort of graphs I show will be part of my mining quick reference guide, which I'll link in the video description. So once you know where you're taking your Quantanium, good to know where to find it. So there are two types of deposits. You've got asteroid deposits and surface deposits. So first we'll look at asteroids. So we'll find a lot of Quantanium around CrewL3, HER-L3, and I would assume around ArcL3, which is over here. Though I haven't been because it's not close to a refinery, so HER-L3 and CrewL3 are the best ones for getting to a relatively close refinery like CrewL1 from HER-L3. These are Lagrange points. They're very good because there are relatively few other types of materials, so you'll either find Quantanium, laranite or hephaestonite at these spots. So if 1 in every 3 rocks you scan is Quantanium, then that's good. You'll also see we've got this ring of asteroids that goes round the Stanton system. So that's the Aran Halo Belt. So out there you can find potentially huge clusters of multiple Quantanium rocks together. But you can also find every other material you can imagine, so it's quite hard to scout. And this is why I really recommend it for group ops rather than as a solo. The other benefit to it though is if you're worried about getting jacked by pirates, you're very hard to find out there. So if you do just want to put an audio book on and chill out, by all means head to the Halo. If you want help finding that, I've included sort of a list of the different sort of points you can go from and to, and cut your engine at certain distances to reach the Halo. And I've got another video on the Halo as well. So then you get surface deposits, and these are primarily on the moons. So around Crusader, you've got Selen, Yela, and Daymar, which all have Quant on them. Also at the 2 moons of ArcCorp, Lyria and Walla. And on the moons of Microtech, as well as on Microtech itself. There are now tiny mineable rocks around the caves at Hurston, but it doesn't spawn large nodes, so don't go to the Hurston system if you're looking for Quantanium. So once we arrive at our location, we need to think about finding a rock to mine. We do that via scanning. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to update this guide, because it's a big change from 3.13 to 3.14. This is like a scan readout in 3.13. You see I found a 22.99% Quantanium rock. It gives me the readout down the right hand side of the materials which are in the rock. And it gives me those in terms of sort of the percentage of the overall rock that they make up. I also get other data down the left-hand side about the mass of the rock, the instability and the resistance, which are all factors that work out sort of how easy it is to mine. So fast forward to 3.14, word of warning, this was recorded in the PTU. So there are some bugs that I hope you won't still be dealing with going forward. But one of them here is that all these percentages on the right hand side have been times by 100. So that's saying 46.52% Quantanium. but you'll see that it now only accounts for the mineable materials within the rock. It doesn't factor in the inert materials. So that 46.52%, if we just switch to our mining laser to get a look at it, is actually 38.75%, because there we've got the 16% inert materials getting accounted for, and it's not as much Quantanium as it seemed to be. Still a very good rock, but how do we tell what's worth stopping for? If it says 25% Quantanium, that could mean a variety of things depending on how much inert material there is in the rock. So we need to come up with a way to see from the pilot seat of the mole, where we can't access a mining laser, whether or not a rock is worth mining. And I personally think this is a little mini nerf to solo mole by CIG. A lot of what they try to do is push people towards multi-crewing ships, which I love, but it does sort of tread on the best way to make money in the game, in my humble opinion. So we've tried to break it. And like all of life's problems, this one can be solved with Excel. So what you still see on the scan is the instability of the rock. And we found that there's a distinct relationship between instability and the amount of Quantanium you have in the rock. So this is Quant with fairly stable materials. So this is all your things like quartz, aluminium. Basically, when it comes to mining, anything apart from borace. So if you look here, if I set my sights on sort of a 35% rock, I want to be looking for an instability of at least 7. If you pair Quantanium with even small amounts of borace, it jacks up the instability. So this is our one for with unstable materials, but again, I just mean borace. And you'll see that this sort of sets the sights higher. So if you want to be going for a 30% rock here, you want to be going sort of north of 8 on the instability. However, this gives us something to reference to basically determine whether the rock we're looking at is worth stopping for, getting in the mining laser and having a look. Undoubtedly, you will still stop at some rotten rocks, ones with loads of borace in them. But hopefully this will help you avoid wasting your time with very low percentage Quantanium deposits. So after all that theory, it's time to get on with some practicals. So I've come to Cruel 1 Ambitious Dream Station, my home refinery, and I'm going to try and do an asteroid run. So when I say we're aiming for 500k to a million an hour, I mean we're going to look for 250k to 500k in 30 minutes. And 2 of those gives you your hourly rate. So that's my target time for my asteroid runs. I've timed myself over the last month or so, doing any time I do it solo. And I'm sitting at about 26 minutes a run, so I feel confident that that's possible, and possible to free up some time to factor in sort of your runs from the refinery to the TDD to sell. So before we head out there, though, we better make sure the ship's equipped right, because you've got to have the right tools for the job. That's really important with quant mining. So if we open up our Mobiglass with F1, go to the Vehicle Loadout Manager, and select the Argo Mole from the drop-down. Our first page is all about the lasers, and this is the most important bit of kit. You've got to buy a Lancet MH2. So that will cost you about 25k. It's available from a number of the refinery stations and dumpers depots. And this isn't the most powerful laser, but power's not necessarily what we need. The big thing about the Lancet is that it provides a minus 75% buff to instability and resistance. Quant rocks are really unstable, particularly when you get down to small pieces, so this is an absolute must-have. You also then have mining consumables, so these are things that you can add to your laser to increase its effect. I go with a surge module, we're going to use that to break the rock quicker, get the first break in, and Brandt modules, which I use to improve the instability even more, to just make it easier to mine. You can tweak other parts of the build, so you can change other systems on the ship or the modules, but the second most important thing to have is an XL1 quantum drive. It's the quickest drive for a ship of this size, and you want to be quick because you're on a timer whenever you're mining Quantanium. So just make sure you can get there and back faster. So I'm going to start my run at the vehicle retrieval console, get my Argo Mole out, and I'm going to possibly sort of speed this bit up wherever I can, where it where it doesn't really affect things. But I'm going to keep the little clock going in real time in the bottom right corner, just to keep myself honest. So the first little tip for any new players: before you head out into hard vacuum, just go outside your character with F4 and check that you got a helmet on. Number of times I have died at about here because I was gasping for air. So you get to the mole. It's quick to open the elevator if you just sort of look directly in between the two saddlebags and a bit low of the lift. Can sometimes be a tricky one to get open the first time. And the mole is a beast of a ship. We've got 2 decks, but for this we don't really care about anything on this deck. We're going to go straight up the ladder, and we're not going to come back down it until the end. So through this way to the bridge. That there is the entrance to the mining laser that you're going to use. And go just jump into the pilot seat. So if we get the ship powered up, and the first thing I'm going to do is start by just plotting my route. If you don't plot your route the first time, then sometimes just click on another one and back onto the one you're aiming for. So we're aiming for her L3. Get your quantum drive spooling sort of as soon as you're able to, as soon as you're out of setting your route. Just all these little things can just save a little bit of time, and shaving the seconds is where we're gonna get our times down and get our AUEC per hour rates up. So it's all about just min-maxing where you can. So this is a good view to see the mining laser on the mole, so directly below where we're sitting in the bridge. This is the downside to the mole. You have to move from the seat which you use to fly the ship in order to jump into the mining laser and actually mine a rock. The Prospector benefits from being able to do both from the same seat at the same time. The upside to the mole, though, is it's got a lot more carrying capacity, 96 SCU versus 32, so 3 times as much. So soon we're going to arrive at our destination, her L3, and the first thing we need to worry about is finding a rock to mine. So we're going to do that through the scanning, and the first thing we're going to look to do is send out a ping. So this is now tied to your tab key, and you don't have to enter scanning mode to ping. So instantly at the top left we see something 3,000 meters away. And we can enter the actual scanning mode by hitting V on the keyboard. And as long as we've got signal strength over on the right, we can hold down the left mouse button to scan. So already we've hit Quantanium. However, if we do the divide 100 for the PTU, we'll see it's only 5.57% of the mineable materials, and it will be even less of the overall rock. So that's not worth bothering with. We want to probably aim for something above 30%. So as soon as I've found and scanned one deposit, I'm going to hit comma on my keyboard. Comma and full stop by default will narrow and widen the field of your scan. So you'll see now when I let out pings that it comes up with 180 degrees. So this means that just my scans are going to be going out more towards the front of my ship, so I don't get confused by the stuff that I've already scanned and been past. So you track these sorts of blobs on the screen. They look a bit weird, but once you get used to it, they're a lot nicer on your eyes than the blue boxes ever were, which was 313 and prior. So as I hone in, I let out more pings just to sort of determine exactly where this rock that I can scan is, and you'll see I get those 3 white dots. They used to be the arrows. So I'm going to scan these and see what's in them, and I see that I've got laranite. So where you get a cluster of rocks, if one of them's Quantanium, all of them will be Quantanium. If the first one you scan isn't Quantanium, then just move straight on. Don't worry about scanning all 3. You're not going to find Quantanium on the second or third scan. So just move on. It's all about just getting very disciplined with your scanning. That will let you get more scans per minute, and that's what really improves your times on runs. If you're not getting the scan to start progressing, then roll up on your mouse wheel to improve your signal strength or get closer. But some rocks just won't scan. Better to recognize when that happens when you have a reasonable amount of signal strength and it's just not scanning, then that's just a bug in the game. It's frustrating as hell. But again, it's one of those things to just coach yourself to just move on from. Because sort of hanging around it, trying to get it to scan probably won't work and will ruin your time. Apologies if I sound like a broken record, but these are just the things I tell myself when I'm out. So I scan my next rock, and instantly I see instability 7.25, so that's pretty good. Check the contents, and there's no borate in there, so that's over that 7% threshold that I said on the charts that we had at the beginning. Looked interesting. So this one merits going in for a closer inspection. So you do want to be a bit more careful with the new flight model than we maybe were in 3.13 and prior. It's got a bit harder to stop, I would say. So yeah, just take it easy. You will get within at least 100 meters of the rock that you're trying to mine, and just use sort of F4, go outside your ship, check where you are in relation to it. You can hold down F4 and mouse wheel to zoom in and out if you want to get yourself sort of more of a picture. And we just want to sort of maneuver ourselves so that that laser is pointing at the rock. Just take your time finding the position. It's better to take more time and get in the right position than it is to have to move the mole and get all the way back up the ladder and back into the seat to shift it a little bit. So once we're in the seat, if we hold down F and just look above ourselves, get the power on button, and now we can scan this rock with the more in-depth mining laser scanner. And we see 39.84, so turn the laser on with left click, scroll up on the mouse wheel to get to 100%, because this is 4.6k mass, and we're going to drop a surge module. So that's, I hold down Alt and I press 2, so those mining modules are on 1, 2, 3. What we're aiming for here is to get the charge level over on the right hand side into the optimal zone, so that green. And then we want to hold it within the green without going into the red. So mouse wheel up and down to try and find the right level of charge to be keeping that within that band. There's no perfect number setting to stick your laser intensity to because all the rocks are different. Like, they have different mass, they have different instability. So unfortunately, the PTU was a bit plagued by some of these bugs. I kept on losing the scan on it. Don't get frustrated. If a rock is overcharging, then step away and let it cool off. You know, if it gets all the way up in that red, the entire thing's going to blow up. And what was a nice rock to mine will not be one. And you'll go home empty-handed, and maybe you'll even go home in a broken ship. So we, even though we try to sort of push the min-maxing, just be aware that if something is frustrating you, to sort of step away from it, give up a bit of time at that point. However, this rock seems to be behaving itself, and as we get the green approaching the top, it's going to split into pieces. But we're even sort of slipping into the red and having a bit of overcharge built, because when these rocks break apart, if you've got overcharge in it, then they'll spread much further. So you can then just scan the individual parts of these rocks to see their contents. And in this one, we get 31.5% Quantanium. So we're going to mouse wheel up again, left click to turn our laser on, and get some charge building here. Just bear in mind, these bits are much smaller than the first break, 908 mass versus the 4.6k. So you don't need as much power to get that charge level building, and particularly not to just hold it in the green zone. So just go gently with this. The PTU did have a few bugs where it kept losing the scan. So this was frustrating me, understandably, but this is hopefully not plaguing you guys at the moment. So, like I said, if you get sort of a bug like this or desync, it's better to just sort of turn your laser off, wait for it to behave itself, and then then get building again. And if you do sort of struggle with one rock, just move on to a different one, while that one cools down. So this is pretty high Quantanium, nearly 95%. So this is, as you see, it's got its own instability and resistance figures. Now, this is the major benefit of the Lancet. Sort of the actual instability of this is closer to 10. But because of the 75% reduction, we've got that instability right down. So to get it down further, what I did just there was I dropped a brand module. So I hit Alt-1 on my mining modules. So that brand, you can see on the left-hand side, is also dropping instability by 75%. So now we're all the way down at 0.61 instability, and this is very smooth to break. And even though the charge rate is slower, it can be quicker because you're not bouncing in and out of the optimal zone. So once we perform the second break, it will be possible to extract those purple outlined rocks, but don't at the moment. Because the Quantanium's on a timer that starts when you start extracting it, it makes more sense to break every yellow rock, outlined rock that contains Quantanium, and then extract it all at the end. Just so you're not pushing yourself against the volatility timer for no reason. So one thing I do see quite a lot of newer players do is basically make the mistake of trying to keep that green all the way near the very top of the bar, sort of keep the green as full as possible without going into the red. It doesn't affect the charge rate at all, depending on where you're hitting that. So I think it's much better in case you do hit a desync to actually be hanging around lower in the optimal zone. So I'm sort of aiming for halfway, and then when I build halfway, I tend to just drop off a little bit. Try and find I build myself in a bit of safety. Then I run less risk of just sort of drifting into the red a little bit at the end or falling victim of a desync. If you do find it desyncing, so just nothing is moving, like it always helps to just keep an eye on like your charge rates and things, and just make sure that bar is moving. If it's not, then it sort of freezes on you. Then chances are you've hit a desync. If that happens, just left click to turn the laser straight off, and that will just really improve your chances of not drifting into the red zone and coming back to a rock about to explode in your face. So we'll add a bit of speed to the proceedings here, because all I'm going to do is continue breaking up any of these yellow rocks that contain Quantanium. And while taking my time with the brand modules is to be recommended, it doesn't necessarily make the best watching. So we'll get on to the next part, which is the extracting. You might see, if you're eagle-eyed, a tiny little bit of red in this rock. Hit a bump of desync, but it didn't turn out too badly. Just exploded a little bit more than the others. So now we've got these pieces which have the purple borders, and that means we can right-click and switch our laser to extraction mode, which you can see at the top of your thing. And when you left-click to turn it on, you'll see a distinctive sort of animation versus the mining mode. And we'll see down at the bottom the rate of SCU per second being pulled into our hold, and on the bottom right of our cargo, we can see our the current contents. So because the mass of all these asteroids is around 5k, I know they contain roughly 100 SCU of material. So when you just break one rock, sort of 4.6k, in your mole, you know that you can pretty much fit the whole rock inside the mole. So we don't have to be particularly careful about which of these pieces we're picking up. The main difference between sort of if I was in a prospector would be that I would scan every one of these pieces to check that they were Quantanium, and I would prioritize the highest percentage Quantanium pieces. So not to worry too much about that when you're flying a mole and you've only got one rock to mine. Now, what you might sometimes find is two rocks that spawn together. So at that point, you could have an awful lot more than sort of 30 to 40 SCU of quant to potentially mine. You can go up into sort of 60s, 70s. A number of times we've had a golden run where we've managed to fill a mole with 96 SCU purely of Quantanium. So it can be done. At that point, you'd want to be a lot more careful, like scanning to make sure you just pick up these 100% pieces of Quantanium first. But in this situation, you don't need to worry too much. We can also sort of do a sort of quick in your head calculation, is roughly the percentage of Quantanium. So this one was about 39. In a 5k mass rock would equal around 39 SCU of Quantanium. So that would just help you sort of to understand, based on what's your cargo, whether you've still got Quantanium rocks to go looking for in this jumble. Something which can be quite useful to do is just take out some rocks to see if there was one behind it. That's how you can sometimes miss a decent Quantanium rock like this one that I've just got. If you wanted to get it out of the way without necessarily taking it into your cargo hold, if you were short on space, what you can do is switch back to your mining mode and just give it sort of 3-4%, and you can blow up these small purple rocks. But I've got 35.83 SCU of Quantanium at the top there. So considering this mass was about 4.6, I think that sounds about right. Looks like I've got all the Quantanium that was here. One thing which can be really useful to use is there's a number of tools for this sort of thing online. The one that I use is SC Org Tools. It's being developed by a good friend of mine in my org. So we're helping him test it. And if you'd like to use that, then I'll pop a link in the video description. It can just help you sort of tell how much you'd expect to get out of a rock. It can be useful to test before you commit to actually breaking a rock up, if you're not sure about how much you're going to make out of it and whether it's worth it or not. So we want to set our route back for Crew L1, spool up the quantum drive with B. Now, this is where I could have improved. Something which some people would tell you to do is, when you find your rock that you're about to mine, get your route locked in first before you leave the seat. That would just mean that if you were to encounter a bug where you couldn't set your route, you'd know about it before you'd got volatile Quantanium in your hold. So at this point, I just tend to recommend not getting greedy. So we just got our one rock, mined it, and now we're going to come back with it. If you find a cluster where the rocks are right next to each other, then you'll be able to, no problem, just break both of them up completely and then start extracting it. But what I wouldn't do is mine one rock and then go off looking for the next one. It's better to just respect the timer, go and get your volatile cargo dropped off. When you come out of your first jump to Crew L1, if you press B and search for the station, you'll be able to make another jump. So you come out about 75 kilometers away, but with a second jump, you cut out 50 kilometers of that. It's always quicker to do that, even if you're just waiting for the cooldown on your QT drive. It's better to just stay still, wait, and do the second jump than it is to try and drive the 50 kilometers in the mole. So coming in, it's quite easy to sort of you can probably come in at about 300, can probably push it a little bit faster. Used to always come in at 400. Just with the new flight model, I wasn't quite sure at what point to start reducing my speed, so that I stopped. And if you see where my crosshair is sort of in the middle, pointing at the stem coming down from this station, I know from experience that when I request landing, it's going to be at one of these pads. So I'm just going to set my HUD to the comm. I've got comms with Crew L1, request my landing spot. And it's going to give me a pad over on the left. Now, just a quick note on exploits, because a lot of people will tell you at this stage, land, stand up, hold down backspace to respawn your character. you'll wake up in the hab and your ship will automatically be put away. I don't have a problem if you want to use that sort of thing. Of course, I'm sure I have plenty of times. What I don't want to do is create a guide saying a certain time is possible, and use exploits to do it, because just Star Citizen's a game in development, and just next week they could patch that. Certainly, that's going to go out of date with if medical sort of hospital spawns come in. So the last time I did one of these, it lasted 2 patches. So hopefully this one can as well. So once you've got to this point, don't rush this bit. Don't rush the landing. The danger with the volatile cargo is that it's on that timer and we've got plenty of time. But if we really hammer the landing, then that can knock down the amount of time, and the Quantanium could just go straight critical. So nice and slow with the landing. Take your time over it. You're not in a hurry, not for this final bit. So once you got the touchdown, just U to turn your systems off, hold down Y to jump out of the chair, and then we're gonna get ourselves back into the station. Sounds a bit obvious, but do just familiarize yourself with your ship before you try to do it under time pressure. Just knowing which doors to go through and which doors require you to hold F and open them, which are automatic, just does really help. So when we get to the hangars, just go straight into the fleet manager and put your Argo Mole away. So just click that store button. Once it's stored in the station, that's stopped the Quantanium timer. So even if you were right up against a red buzzer, there's a chance you can get it stored before it blows up, at which point it'll be okay. Each refinery deck, they're in slightly different positions, but they'll have a set of these internal elevators, with the options Galleria, hangars and habs, and refinery, so we want to head for the refinery deck. Speed this up because it's a bit of a long journey to the refinery. Good chance to check out your armor though, totally justifiable purchase. But when we get to the refinery decks, we go ahead straight for the refinement terminals. So just follow out into the main hall of the refinery. You just want to carry on straight down this main central gangway. See the sign for service. These are the same at every refinery station. So straight up the stairs and right into this room where we find the terminals. Now I'm going to refine this so we can show you the full loop. But you could sell straight over on the left if you wanted to. First thing to do, select the material location. That's the Argo Mole, and we set up a work order. Now I'm just going to select the Quantanium to refine. We have to transport this to the TDD. The quartz, the beryl, they're not worth enough to bother refining in my mind. Sort of less than Barace, don't waste space. The main thing you're looking for with your process, I've got a whole video on processes which is still up to date, but you're looking for high yield. That make sure you get 95% of what you've mined. So that's going to cost 14,905 because I'm using the slightly quicker Ferrin exchange. So that would take 19 hours to come good and be fully done. If I wasn't in a rush, I'd just use Dinnick solventation. It's the cheapest one, get me just as much yield, but it will take quite a bit longer, sort of closer to 2 days probably. So as I said before, this is completely doable as well with a Prospector. So got to spend money to make money, but the mole is 5 million credits, whereas you can get into a Prospector for 2 million. And personally, I just bought a Prospector, and then I used my Prospector to buy my mole, and I used my mole to buy pretty much all my other ships. So we'd still go use a Lancet, but this time it's an MH1 mining laser head, slightly smaller size for the Prospector. We're still going to take Surge and Brant as our consumables, but this time I'm going to add one of the newer modules, the FLTR XL. This one is, it basically makes you not pick up as much inert materials. When you, sort of, for example, are extracting a rock which is part Quantanium, part inert, it will not take as many of the inert materials. So the Prospector has a smaller carrying capacity, so it's really important for the Prospector to not pick up those bits of inert. it sort of crushes profitability. Then for propulsion, we'll go with an Atlas drive. This is probably one of the best QT drives for a small ship. So all of the scanning and stuff is just the same in the Prospector as the Mole. So we'll just skip straight to the actual mining of the rock. So in the words of Blue Peter, here's one I made earlier. Exactly the same principle, but like you can see with the Prospector, I can just nose around. Now, all rocks will have like a slightly weak point. They got a number of weak points where you can just see a bit more movement coming in the charge level. And with the Prospector, it's really good to get around those and find them. You have to sort of wiggle the laser a bit more on the Mole, whereas the Prospector is really nice for doing this. So as you can see, there's no real difference in the ability of the laser to do the job. The size 1 and 2 lasers actually have exactly the same power. That doesn't vary between them. The thing which changes is range. So the size 1 lasers have a shorter range than the size 2s. So you do have to sort of really get in close to the rock, sort of get it so your nose is almost touching it and it's filling the view screen. But the Prospector, because it's that much more nimble, and you're obviously at the pilot controls, you can move them around even while you're mining. So it really does specialize at that. It's not a barrier to it at all. What might be a bit more of a danger with the Prospector is if you do overcharge a rock, you're going to be seriously close to it, and I'd be surprised if you survive. But the saying in the org is you're not a true Quantanium miner until you've lost your eyebrows at least once. So it's all part of the learning experience. So once you've got that first break in, it's just exactly the same as the Mole. You're going to look for these pieces to crack, get them broken down into just the purple stage, and then start extracting. The one thing that I would say is just try and be a little bit more picky with the Prospector. You've only got that 32 SCU of cargo space. So I would recommend scanning all of the pieces and only taking the 100% pieces first. Then once you know that you've got all the 100% bits, go back over it, looking for the next highest percentage Quantanium pieces, just to make sure you maximize that hold space. So thanks to doing it this way, we're just getting those 100% bits and we're nearly full. And there we go, 32 SCU of pure Quantanium. Gonna take that back to the refinery and stick that job in as well. One borderline exploit that I recommend to Prospector pilots, having said I don't recommend exploits, sometimes when you land the Prospector it can bug and it can just go straight to critical. So if you call for landing and get a landing spot but then hang over a different pad, you'll get this message that you're obstructing the parking area and that your vehicle is being impounded. At this point, we're going to get sucked back into the station without having actually touched our ship down. So just while that is still a bug, I would recommend in the Prospector to not land and just use that so that you don't lose your 32 SCU. And we'll see that now the Prospector is automatically stored as well. We'll get a 15-minute timer and we'll have to pay a fine of 5,000, but honestly, if you got a full load of Quant, it's worth the 5k. So I should have maybe included an intermission in this, but if you want to stretch your legs, go and get a cup of tea, just, hit pause. But when you're ready, we're going to carry on and do one last type of mining. We're going to go head for some surface deposits and go big rock hunting. So go back to the Mole for this, and this time I'm going to equip all 3 lasers. I'm going to make them all Lancets, and the 2 of them which are in the lower deck, turrets 2 and 3, I'm going to use as my braking lasers. So on both of those I'm going to equip 2 Surge modules and 1 Stampede module. This is a bit trickier than Asteroid mining, so there's a chance you might mess it up. So I just find having both lasers equipped, ready to break the rocks, gives me more chances to do it. Turret 1, the one below the bridge, I'm going to use exclusively after I've made the first break of a rock. So this has also got a Lancet, but I'm equipping some Brants to make breaking high percentage pieces easier. And I've got an XTR XL module. This increases the extraction rate. The Lancet's a bit of a slow extractor, So this gives us a 50% boost at the cost of a bit of laser power, which we don't need because we're only going to hit the smaller rocks with this laser. So I tried to give you as many spots to go Quantanium mining in the beginning of the video, just so we can keep it fresh, keep avoiding the pirates, but I'm going to head to my favourite one, which is Paradise Cove on Lyria. So as soon as you exit QT and you're in atmosphere, you can just hit K to toggle your VTOL. The mole's got great VTOL thrusters. They'll just help it stay more stable when you're in Atmo. And you can now see the HUD's got an indicator for whether your VTOL's on or off. The scanning technique is very much the same as we find in space, but just a moment to appreciate how cool the scan effects are now when you're down on planets. Part of the reason I do love moon mining over space mining more now is I just love the terrain. I love sort of seeing the scenery. And now these scans do make sort of flying at night a lot less dangerous than it used to be. So I found a Quantanium deposit. You see it says 6.6 on the instability, so it's not quite as high as the one we were looking at with the when in space. But the key difference is the mass. So this is close to an 8K mass rock, whereas the one we were on before was 4.6. So that's significantly more Quantanium, even if the percentage is lower. I've also found, if you look just over to the left of the ship, that there's another Quantanium rock right next to it that I don't think is quite as good, but it will probably still be worth mining. So this time I'm lining the right-hand side of my ship up with the rock, because we're going to go to the downstairs right laser. And you just have to sort of think about positioning for the different arms. So what you'll see when we get into it is that the arm extends sort of out from the ship. But it's just a case of practice to learn to eyeball these in. And just a little tip and trick, if you sort of find yourself unable to get into the seats of the side turrets, just check that you don't have the landing gear on your mole down. If the landing gear is down, then it will block access to these seats, and you won't be able to get them out. So we'll see this is 7,965 mass. So what we will find is that we won't be able to get a charge building into this. It's just too much for our laser. These rocks are really designed to be cracked by groups of people. So what we do want to do is just see if we can get it to move at all, like just even register a little trickle of power over on the right. And this rock wasn't behaving because PTU, standard excuse. But we'll settle for where we can actually see the charge level. So what we're going to try and do is drop one surge, and as you see, it didn't actually get us even sort of too close to the green zone. So even if we keep our laser on here, we're not going to build enough power. So we're going to mouse wheel down, drop the laser intensity, and allow the rock to cool, allow that charge level to drop on the right hand side. Then when we think we got it right, we drop another surge. That one took us all the way into the green zone, so that was perfect. At the same time as we go into the green zone, we activate the Stampede module. Now that greatly increases the charge rate, plus 125%. And by combining those modules, solo, we've managed to split a nearly 8K mass rock. Once that rock's split, it's very much the same as it was with the space mining. We just want to break apart the yellows into all the purples. So what I've done is I've broken both of the rocks in this particular cluster, and now I'm just going to chop them up into all the pieces. Sometimes when you're on when you're surface mining, it makes sense to break up everything just so you can see where the Quantanium is, because it doesn't split out like it does in space. But the big advantage we've got to surface mining is we can find the bigger range of mass, which means that we can potentially find high mass, high Quantanium, and take home a lot of money. So as we scoop up the last Quantanium piece there, we're going to tick our hold just towards 60 SCU of Quantanium. So as we scoop up the final bit and fill our cargo, we're just over 60 SCU. So now the Quantanium's in the cooker, it's time to start thinking about how to get it to market. So for that, we're going to need a cargo ship. So very entry level will be your Cutlass Black. It's got 46 SCU of cargo. It will be something a lot of people have if they've sort of graduated from like rock mining with a Cutlass. So then you've bought your Prospector, and this will be good enough to do one Prospector load at a time. Not particularly efficient, but it will get you towards your first better cargo ship. So another good option for when you're just with a Prospector is renting a base freelancer. That's 34,000 AUEC a day. So what I'd do is I'd stack up lots of jobs. You can get 10, 20 refinery jobs running at a time. Then rent this freelancer for a day and ship them 2 at a time, so that you can buy your next ship. But rent this one, don't buy it, because the freelancer has a big brother, the freelancer max, when it comes to cargo hauling. So that's 120 SCU, which should be sort of an average for Prospector jobs. This one will set you back about 2.2 million credits in game, and I would say if you're in a Prospector, then this should be your next stop. It's definitely the best value for money for that amount of SCU. At this sort of capacity, I've also included the Mercury Star Runner, because 114 SCU is nearly the same as the max. I'd include this even though it's way more expensive at 4.9 million, because it's a lot of people's dream ship. So if it's your dream ship and you also want to haul refinery jobs, then by all means. But if you're purely looking for a refinery hauler, at that SCU, just go for the Freelancer Max. So there'll be some other competitors in between, things like the Constellation Taurus, which is coming in 314. But at this point, I would just jump to the Drake Caterpillar, buyable in game for 4.7 million credits. It's got 576 SCU of cargo space. So this is where you really jump up to doing multiple mole runs. Also in that price range at 4.9 million, you've got the biggest cargo hauler in the game, the C2 Hercules Starlifter. So this has got 696 SCU. And this is just, if you're looking for the biggest, then this is the one for you. Notable mentions also go to things like the Carrack. That's got a very decent complement of SCU. Just, I can't recommend a ship which costs 26 million. For a lot of people, that will be a ship that they're looking to do this sort of mole mining for. So when our orders are done, we'll just come back to the refinery, go into this refinement center, and we'll see there that we've got 2 completed orders from the mole run and the Prospector run at the Asteroids. So we select the storage option, and we're going to drop that into our C2. I'm also going to pick up the ground deposit, one from ArcL1, while I'm on my way to go and sell. So we just click collect on that, and it will process for a little bit, and then we'll get the message to say that the work order's been delivered. So then you can continue to load up your ship with more refinery orders. So what I tend to do is I tend to stack up orders. And that's why I tend to start by using Dinix solventation at the refinery, and then as the days go on, I might slim down to Ferron, and then I get a big order ready to go in my C2. You don't have to put all of your eggs in one basket. So one thing to just say about it is, fly with what you can afford to lose. So if you stack up 20 jobs and you could stick it all in one ship, just ask yourself, can you afford to lose the amount of money that a full C2, for instance, would represent? Because that's up towards 5-6 million credits worth. It could be multiple hours of work. It might make sense to split that into smaller loads. You don't have to take it all in that one go. So one more thing I do just want to warn you about before we take off. The cargo boxes don't always physicalize. So sometimes you're staring at an empty hangar on your ship and you wonder where your Quantanium has gone. Don't worry, it's there. It's just a bug in the game that it doesn't always show. So one of the big advantages to the larger ships is that you start by spawning in a hangar. So that keeps you safe from pad rammers. what you can do is just sit there and let your shields charge up. They take quite a while to get to full capacity, so just take that time and plot your route. I'm going to swing by Arc L1 and then we're going to go to Arc Corp to actually sell this. You can even get your quantum drive spooled up while you're in the hangar, so that can be charging. I would recommend on your transport ship prioritizing buying a fast QT drive. That's the main thing you need this to do. Although I'd also recommend upgrading the shields, upgrading some of the weapons, so that you have the means to maybe fight off. This is the really high value part of your day. So once your shields are all fully charged, that's when I'd go ahead and summon the station. You just have to wait for the doors to open, but then you can be pretty quickly sort of out of the station and speeding away. I wouldn't hang around at this point and let my guard down. Sort of until this point with mining, you haven't lost any money. Sort of even if you get a 30k or if you ran into pirates while you've got Quantanium sort of on board your mole, the worst you've lost is your mole and the modules. But here, you've made an investment in refining these goods, so you're down money at this point until you sell. So one trick I have picked up from some trader friends is that you can listen for the sort of thank you and goodbye from the ATC at the space station, and then as soon as you hear that, what you want to do is reach over to your comm panel and just call for landing. Just wait to hear them give you that message which says, proceed to landing bay, and then head on to your next destination. There's just a chance that if you then 30k during this period, it will register that you called for landing at the refinery station. And there's a chance, again I say a chance, that your ship will be stored with the cargo intact, because other than pirates, the scariest thing for us here is surfer instability. So I've picked up the other load from Arc L1 as well, and I'm heading down to Arc Corp, and I'm going to look for the major landing zone. So you sometimes have to just drag the planet around a little bit until you find that circle in a circle, and that's Area 18. Once you're down in atmosphere, just take a look around you and look for the spaceport. So I know it's that flat area just ahead of me. I'd strongly recommend just doing a dummy run, without any Quantanium in your hold. Know where you're going, which LZ you're heading for. Fly down to it and just learn to identify, where the spaceport is. Just the quickest amount of time that you can safely spend in this rather dangerous period, the better. So once we've got landed, we're going to make a beeline straight for the plaza. So we just need to jump on the train. And in terms of why I've come to Area 18, I'm not entirely sure about Horizon, but compared to Lorville and New Babbage, Area 18 has a higher demand level for Quantanium. I've flown to Horizon a couple of times, and it currently takes ages to get there, so I'm sort of discounting that a bit. There's an awful lot to read if you're interested about sort of tick rates and inventory levels. It's very important for trading and stuff. But the bottom line is Area 18 will be able to buy more of your quant quicker. So we just come to these terminals in the TDD, select the Hercules that we're using, click on our Quantanium, and there we've got demand for the whole thing, and just made ourselves 1 million and change credits. So thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. I know that was a long one, but it was hopefully chocker with useful information. So if you like this sort of content, if you think I've earned it, then please consider hitting subscribe to the channel. I'm going to keep doing this as long as people find it useful. And a big thank you to everybody who's helped me grow this channel as much as it has over the last 6 months. It really means a lot. So I'm determined to keep it under an hour. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the next one.